Hello, everybody. Good evening, and welcome to episode 3. I decided to label them in case Nate
All
wants
right.
to make a playlist or something. Um, this is Lives of the Saints, episode 3, and we thought we would try something a little different. I'm going to let Jeremy do the introduction for the saint
Ah,
that we're covering today. um, I watched this video, and we're going to show several clips of the video. And I'm just gonna waste a little time here, Jeremy, so people can join.
sure. Yeah, I like
Um,
it.
I'm gonna show, or Jeremy. Actually, we had some technical difficulties. I did anyway with my tabs. Anyway, so we're gonna share some clips from a conversation that this saint actually had. Now, one of the things going through my mind, Jeremy, about this was this is something that the internet also affords us,
Mhm.
that we actually get to hear these people speak and see them in,
Yeah,
um,
yeah.
and so, well, I'm just grateful for that.
Yeah, same. It's one of those things because I have very mixed feelings about technology, but
Yeah,
if it wasn't for technology, I wouldn't be Christian right now. So I'm grateful.
yeah,
And like you said, there are a lot of benefits. We're talking now. We're able to spend time here
yeah,
and like you said, they recorded this interview with Father Roman Braga, so it's gonna be great.
yeah. All right, well, I guess we'll get started. Do you wanna give us a little introduction into this saint?
Sure. So Roman Braga, we're gonna see Father Roman Braga. He was one of the he was one of the Romanians who were in the communist prisons, and he he was born in 1922 and he reposed in 2015. So he's technically not canonized yet. He's not uh, officially recognized as a saint, but he's widely venerated. And next year, so the tradition is that they're not officially canonized until at least 10 years after their repose. So next year will be 10 years, and he's fully expected to. I mean, there's no reason he's not going to be made a saint at that time. Like they're already planning on it. So, but there are still icons of him. People venerate him. People pray ask for his intercessions and prayers, and
Yeah,
um, and so, but yeah, he goes into a little bit of what happened in the prisons, and it's pretty. It was horrifying torture that they did, and it wasn't just physical, it was psychological, and he talks about that a little bit. He doesn't go into much detail. Yeah, he is Orthodox, Ron. He's an Orthodox saint, or he will be an Orthodox saint, but he's, like I said,
yeah,
he's considered by many people already venerate him as a saint. um and But he goes into some of what happened in the prison, but it's not, he doesn't go into any detail, so it shouldn't be too
no, it's
disturbing.
not. It's actually not disturbing.
Yeah,
He's very gracious, as you would imagine a saint to be.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Um, I'm going to suggest, so this is the format, guys, that we wanna try to do. We're gonna show a clip, and then we're gonna talk about it. Um, and, I mean, if we had all you know, if we could do whatever we wanted to on YouTube, we'd just show the whole video
Yeah,
and then talk about it, but we can't do that. So we're gonna show clips, and then we're gonna talk about them. And so I'm gonna drop a link into the chat, and I'll just give you a little heads up. Father Braga, he covers like so many amazing things in this talk. Well, it's a conversation actually. It's not a talk. It's not a
yeah,
lecture.
yeah.
So,
He's being
um,
interviewed.
yeah, and he just, when I listened to it, I felt like it was very prescient to this little corner of the internet too. A lot of the things that concern us seem very present in this conversation. So I'm going to drop a link, and if anybody wants to join us for discussion of the clips, please do so, because it's always great to have more than just the two of us. Hello, everybody. Hi.
Hello. Welcome.
Charlie. Hi, Grizz. Hi, McMo. Hi, Ron. Hi, William. I remind myself of there used to be a series on, I don't think it was in the States, it's called Romper Room. Do you know?
Oh yeah, we had Romper Room. Yeah.
Remember when she had the magic mirror and she'd say, "Hello, little, Peter," and
we're ready, Mr. Music. Remember? Yeah. And I got one of those balloons that had the rubber band on it, and everybody would jump around.
Yeah.
Pop. We had that. Yeah, we had Romper Room.
And Jan God is with us. Nice to see you, Jan God.
Welcome.
Yeah. Okay, so Jeremy's going to share his. All right. So I don't know what your Mormon upbringing was like, but for me, listening to that for the first time, this is one of the things that I love about the Orthodox Church, is that the kids are present, and there's a real sense of everybody being together. And I don't know. I was, how do I put this? The thing that stood out to me was the fact that he said that that was about training and not teaching. Did that stand out to you at all?
Yeah. It's that idea of the embodied faith, and his mom. His mom's cooking, and she's singing the Psalms while she's cooking. Right? It was just permeated his life.
Yeah.
And it permeated the life of his family. They were like, when he got in trouble, he had to go read the Psalms. Like,
I was thinking to myself, what a good idea.
Yeah.
And then also the learning how to read.
Yes.
In the prayer book,
Yeah. No, it's a kind of a window into another time, right? It seems like it's like, my grandparents could tell similar stories, and especially my great grandparents, but it still seems that it's so alien to us now. It's so far away from that simple life of, all day long my mom was cooking, and we didn't work on Saturday because that was for cooking, and Sunday we just read. It's like just that being able to have that simple structure and live in that, but the Psalms are permeating all of it. Prayer is permeating all of it. It's a very embodied and very rich way to live.
Yeah. And it seems like we still we have all those parts of our lives divided. We get up and then we go to work, and it's actually like literally like you're absent from the home. But his parents were farmers, right? So everybody was home, and interesting. All right, the next tab, and I kind of subtitled some of these. I just put down, what is monasticism?
Okay.
Because he gets into it, because he gets asked a question. So it's about 6:56, somewhere around there.
I'll just keep playing it, because that's just like 10 seconds ahead of where I am.
So. Perfect. I'm just trying to break it up for,
Yes, exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
We're being a good girl and a good boy.
We're trying. No, yeah, so this is definitely fair use because we're doing commentary. So no, it's that's something that really struck me early on when I was coming back into Christianity and into Orthodoxy especially, was the idea that, monastics are one form of monasticism, but marriage is also considered a monasticism, and single life is monasticism. Like, wherever you are, you're called to be ascetic. And the asceticism is to bring your body and bring the physical and bring your passions into line and to bring them under subjection to the Spirit, and to surrender your will and surrender your desires and your comfort, and seek after the Spirit, seek after and really lean into your dependence on God.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I thought it was really quite something to hear someone, to hear him say that we're all monastics. I loved
Right.
it.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. And I actually came to that conclusion outside of the Orthodox Church that marriage and monasticism were the same thing. Like, this was one of the things, like I've talked about being in the church and how it confirmed a lot of things for me. That was one of them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I
Yeah.
just naturally thought about it, and I thought, well, wait a minute, it's this, these things are involved, and they're both the same thing.
Yeah.
So
I remember, I can't remember who the interview was with. I think it was in this little corner, but he was talking about, it was Richard Rowland. He was talking about his grandmother was a nun. His family was Catholic at that time. Like his grandparents were Catholic, and his grandmother had become a nun. And at that time, they actually did a wedding ceremony, and she was married to Christ.
yeah, they did in the Catholic Church. They do that in the Catholic Church.
Yeah, well, they did. I don't think they do anymore.
Oh, they don't anymore? Oh, okay.
No, I don't think so. But yeah, it was pre-Vatican II. But it was a beautiful ceremony. It was that idea that you're either married to your spouse or you're married to Christ, and
Right.
and also the monastics feel that they're married to their community as well, right? To their brothers or to their sisters.
Yeah.
And it's that same idea though of surrendering. It's like crucifying yourself in the service of others, and you can either do that in a community environment of monasticism and to Christ, or you can do it in marriage and surrender yourself for your spouse. I think they do have nuns, David, but I don't think many of them wear habits. But there are definitely nuns in Catholicism still.
They don't have habits?
Most, especially in America, no, they don't. The nuns do not wear habits anymore.
This is an interesting observation. If you have daily rituals and you do these rituals in a building and not outdoors like a homeless person, you're living a monastic life? Is that a question, Jan God, or is that a statement? Because it feels like a question. I mean, most monastics are not in a building. Like, this is the thing. I mean, not most, but many. A lot of them are hermits. They get permission to go out, and
actually, there aren't many that get permission to be hermits. Most of them live in a community.
True.
Most of them live in a community, and they celebrate together.
But I don't think they're only monks in a building. I think that's what I'm saying.
No.
Like when they go out, they're not, they're not monks anymore.
Yeah, I don't really follow the line of reasoning that Jan God's pointing out.
Or maybe Jan God, I'm trying to figure out your riddle here. Are they homeless people?
I think he just wanted to make a joke. I think he wanted to make the pun of being a nomadic monastic, maybe.
Okay.
That's not really a pun, but it's kind of a nice rhymey phrase. I don't know. I'm sorry. Yeah. I'm too simple to get your humor.
The Irish monks used to be nomads. Yeah. There's a lot of pilgriming around in a lot of the older literature by monastics. So they're definitely nomadic.
There's a monk I know of in Denver, and he's the only monk at his monastery, and he gets around quite a bit. He travels a lot. Father Christodolos. He definitely could be considered a nomad. I mean, that's his home, but he's gone a lot.
Yeah.
So
those who walk alone. Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's something to that. All right. The other thing I wanted to mention was the monastery close by this is kind of prevalent in Eastern European culture. And I just remember reading, I think it was in The Orthodox Way or The Orthodox Church by Callistos Ware, how historically in those countries, monks would show up and establish a monastery, and then the people would gather around, and then some of those monks would want to move out into a more solitary life, and they would go out, and then the people would follow them. And apparently, this is one of the things that's largely responsible for settling some of the more remote areas of Russia. And so it's just interesting that, he grew up in a place where there was a monastery close by, which to me indicates the people were gathered around the monastery, right?
Yeah. Well, and you still see this where people live around monasteries and they go to, like, people retire and then they go buy a house close to a monastery and then they just go to the services at the monastery a lot. That still happens now.
Yeah.
So.
That's a question for you, Jeremy.
Does it matter if it happens in a temple? What matters? Well, so yeah, I hear what you're saying. You can have service, you can pray anywhere and you should be praying all the time, right? But when it comes to rituals, the space itself, like, now I have been to a liturgy, I've been to several outdoor liturgies. You do see it, but there are special things that have to be there for a liturgy. Like, for an altar, they have to have this cloth. I can't remember the name of it, and it's got a relic of a saint in the cloth. And that's kind of allows them to have a portable altar, so to speak, because an altar has to have a relic. That's one, like, necessary component. But like I said, I've seen pretty pristine or like rugged, divine liturgy, but there are certain elements that are necessary for a divine liturgy. And you're right. The liturgy itself makes the ground, the altar is holy when you have a relic there. But in a church, the space itself participates, and the way that the church is organized, the space itself lends itself to the worship that's going on there. The space itself participates. All the Orthodox churches are built so that you're facing east when you're facing the altar, and that's symbolic of looking toward the second coming. And also, the tradition is that Christ was he was crucified outside the city, and he was facing to the west. And so, if we want to look at him, we're standing and facing to the east to look into his face. And the dome of the roof is the heavens being bent down. You have the icons around you, which are the cloud of witnesses from the book of Revelation. The space itself, you have the iconostasis that's acting as a veil between the sanctuary and the altar. The space itself is participating in the ritual that happens in divine liturgy. And so it is significant. It's not, all of those elements are not necessary, but if you can have them, why not? Right?
Yeah. Yeah.
It's useful because it contributes to the worship.
Right. Well, Father Braga's going to get into this, Mick-Mo. I think you'll love it, actually. All right, Jeremy, let's go on to the next. Do you want to just continue then? And let me just tell you how far. Well, I've got this subtitled "How He Became a Teacher."
Okay.
And I mean, he goes into the whole being in prison thing, right?
Yeah.
And
we gotta move pretty fast because we're only 10 minutes into the video and we're almost half an hour into this thing.
I know. So maybe we should just do you think we can dare to let this run for what is it, like 20 minutes?
Yeah, I think that's fine.
to the 30-minute mark.
I don't think there's a lot of risk
30-minute
with this
mark.
particular video, to be honest with you. I think it's going to be okay.
Okay, so then just go right straight to 35, 45.
Just play
is my
from
time
now
plan.
until 35 minutes.
35,
Okay.
45, yeah.
Okay. All right, great.
Perfect.
Yeah. You're just a collection of quotes, Sherry.
I know, I thought about that.
I
Oh my
love
God.
that line. That was the one that really struck me.
Yeah.
Jordan Peterson talks about that too, right? Like about how most of your thoughts are not your own, and he spent a lot of time trying to just empty his, like, to ask himself,
Totally.
do I think this, or where did this come from? When he was a young man.
That was exactly what I did too. Like that was my whole reason for going to that Bible school, was because I wanted to know what I believe, because I could just hear myself parroting other people's words,
Yeah.
And now I feel like I know, but I don't know if I can say it.
Oh, yeah.
Like,
Yes.
and so, like, yeah. Anyway, I won't get into it. It's personal, but I just made a few notes. I thought it was interesting that they were taking people between the ages of 25 and 30. 35, sorry. 25 and 35.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought that's literally when kids are in college.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly.
And I had to ask myself, like, somebody took notes on all of this psychological torture and how to make a good communist out of an individual, right? So I don't know. I just have to ask myself the question: how much did these principalities and powers learn from Pitesh? And
Yeah.
there were some, and not, I don't want to get political at all, but there were just some things that really stood out to me, like the fact that they used liturgy to torture with, right? Or to
Yeah.
mind control with the liturgy. And of course, because of recent events, I'm like, oh, wow. Like,
Yeah.
hello.
Yeah. I don't think he talks about it in this interview, but they made them do the liturgy one time on Easter with feces and urine, and made him, and so, yeah, it was horrifying. And like he said, it was especially horrifying because the people torturing them were Orthodox. So they knew, like he said, they would just invert the prayers and modify the prayers, and they were, it was like a specialized form of torture for them, because their torturers knew the Orthodox way, knew the Orthodox ways and prayers, etc. That was really hard to,
And it
really
wasn't
hard
just
to
it
listen to.
wasn't just for priests. It was like, because Romania's culturally Orthodox, right? So,
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
and
It was
like,
just,
if you go back,
people all grow up going to church, and back then it was like everybody went to church. So
yeah, and if you go back to
they
his
knew the prayer.
childhood, they're literally they're taking it in through osmosis, right? Like it's in their family life.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, it's harrowing to listen to these accounts. And so I kind of grew up in the Red Scare era, and so these things are not, I mean, they're shocking, but they're not surprising to me. But what's surprising to me is how many people don't know this side of communism.
Yeah, well, I mean, Solzhenitsyn made it pretty known. They don't know about the Romanian story, of course.
Right. No, I'm talking about younger people.
Oh, yeah.
Like people my daughter's age, and people like in their 20s, they've never been exposed to this history.
Well, didn't I just say that most people between the ages of 25 and 35 are in college?
Yeah.
And they don't know anything.
Right.
You think that's a coincidence? Sorry. Um, I had to say, I was thinking the same thing, young God. I'm like, oh my gosh, this like I said earlier. And then everyone there that was doing this to these people was an expert. That was
Right.
another word that stood out to me.
Yeah.
One of the things I thought was so beautiful was how he talked about the empire inside of you
Mm.
and the world inside of you.
Yeah.
And that I wrote it down. You become yourself. Finding yourself, you find God. Right?
Yeah.
And I think it was you that wrote the white stone name here. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And but what's interesting about that verse is that the people who get the white stone name are overcomers by the word of their testimony. So it's like it's all about lived experience, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. Well, and it's like he just said, they want you to fall and then die. So the whole point is just outlasting it, right? The
yeah,
whole
yeah.
challenge is
Well, yeah, not just
outlasting that
outlasting,
torment.
but making that compromise. That was really
Right.
interesting.
Yes.
Making a
Right.
compromise.
Yeah.
How many people like have been faced with this? Like that's why Yon God's like, this guy is discussing modern times, right?
Yeah.
How many compromises have people made in the last 5 years? Quite a
Yeah,
few.
exactly. Right. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
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 Thank you, Upcycle. Um,
Yeah. Joy mentioned that she's 21 and she was never taught
yeah.
this history of communism. Yeah, no. This is so if anyone hasn't read the Gulag Archipelago, in spite of Jordan Peterson talking about it a lot, just read the abridged version. That'll give
Or
you plenty, or the whole
there's
thing.
there's another book that Solzhenitsyn wrote called August 1914, which I read,
Mm,
and
mm,
it's just thin,
mm,
and it's just a vignette of a few days, I think, in the month of August
mm,
in a gulag.
mm.
And that was enough for me. I was afraid to read the Gulag Archipelago after that.
Yeah,
Literally.
there's a collection of short stories. I'll see if I can look it up real quick. I think it was Colma short stories. There was a man who was a journalist, Kolima, the Kolima tales. He was a journalist in the Soviet Union and wrote many short stories of his experience when he got out. He was just kind of fictionalizing his experience, but it's all based on stuff that happened
Okay.
in the prisons, and that's another really harrowing kind of collection. So it's KOLYMA. I'll write it in the chat.
Yeah. All right. Well, there it is. Kolima Tales.
Yeah.
You know, I have to be careful about reading things like this because I'm so freaking empathetic. I'm like a sponge.
Yeah.
And I carry it with me for so long, and it's
Yeah.
it's not like I'm sticking my head in the sand. Definitely not,
Right.
But hearing all the details, it's oh, good, Joy. I'm glad.
Yeah,
It's
oh, sorry, go ahead.
well, just taking in the details is I have to weigh that out, how ready I am for that. And if for any reason, like if I was alone on a retreat and I had solitude, I could go through it on my own. But if I'm with other people, I'm not with them really. I'm in that world for a long time afterwards. It's just the way I am. So
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
kind of have to be careful about those things.
Well, since we're sharing, though, I will tell there is one more book that I know of. There's many books about what happened in Pitești, and actually, there's you can find videos about it too, like documentaries. But there's one book called "The Saint of the Prisons" by Monk Moisey, and I'll put this in the chat as well. So this one was the life of another one of the prisoners in this prison, and it was written by his one of his spiritual sons.
This is also
it wasn't written by him. It was like he took the journal and then annotated it.
And he was also in Pitești?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I can't pronounce his name. Forgive me.
It's okay.
Valeru Gafinchu, I think is his name.
Oh, he made mention of him in the thing. I think he said Valerie something or other.
Yeah, I couldn't.
Oh, the kids are here. I gotta let them out. This is It's supper time, folks.
All right. Well, I can start the video again if you want to. Oh, or not. Oh, there's the dogs. Okay. We'll just talk to them. So yeah, I got exposed to these stories by my priest because he's his wife's Romanian, and so he's very familiar with these stories, and it's been really, when we went to a monastery down in Arizona, and they had a collection of relics that had been gathered at the burial grounds of the prison, and so we got to venerate. I mean, they were all unknown saints, but they were like not myrrh streaming, but a very strong scent of myrrh.
Well, it was
fragrance.
It was interesting that he said, he made reference to the you Americans. I think he's in Michigan, or he was in Michigan.
Yeah.
And, he thought it was a blessing that people in America didn't have to know these things.
Yeah.
And he just said, the people that have been touched by communism in Romania just carry that with them, right?
Right.
And one of the things I was thinking about, I don't remember who it was. Somebody from this little corner that I was in touch with, or maybe from BOM. It was during COVID. They had a Romanian priest, and during the lockdowns, when they weren't supposed to have church, he was sending. He wouldn't even text. Okay. The congregation. He had other ways of letting them know, and he would after dark, he would open the church, and then they'd all come in, and he'd lock the doors, and they would do divine liturgy every Sunday. But it wasn't at regular hours,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I just thought, wow, that's amazing. Anyway, he gets into this a little bit. So you want to go ahead? All right.
That was the next marker you gave me?
Yeah. Yeah, because there's a whole hell of a lot in there.
Yeah. And then this last 10 minutes is
the best part.
Yeah, the last 10 minutes is it's crazy.
Yeah. The last 10 minutes, I got very emotional.
Yeah. Oh, you're muted. Good. Oh, there we go. Okay.
Yeah, it's okay. Okay, Jeremy, thoughts?
Well, I took some notes.
Cool.
So I liked how he said, the devil has changed his tactics, and he said the devil has sneaked into American democracy as well. And he said, everything, he said here is very dangerous because everything is allowed because nothing is important.
Oh yeah. Gosh.
Yeah. And then he was also talking about how, man is important, whatever we want to do, and our will, and, basically, there's no surrender here. There's no, I can't remember what he said, but I can't remember the exact word he used, but it was just that idea that we're not reverent in America at all. And then, he also said where you can't say Jesus in a public building. He said, this is not freedom. This is
Yeah.
a persecution of another kind.
Yeah. Yeah, and he would be sensitive to it after his experience.
Yeah. Yeah.
'Cause
Well, I
he's,
did.
you know,
Oh,
like
go
he
ahead.
said, you could confess to killing a Russian soldier, and they were like, "Oh, good, you're rehabilitated." But if you still believed in God, you were like, "Oh, no, we gotta go round 50." You
Yeah.
know?
More
Round 50.
beatings.
So
Yeah.
and like he said, you know, that he never met the devil anywhere until he got there, and I mean, the feeling I got from that idea was that they weren't so concerned about morality. It didn't matter to them that you murdered someone,
Right.
but it mattered to them that you believed in God,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
And so yeah. Yeah, and, going back to Jan God's statement, this is, it's pretty contemporary, this talk.
Yeah. Yeah. We're that I really don't think most people are aware that communism has been tried, and this is what happens. This is what it looks like. It looks like where he said, where you're living in fear, you're afraid of saying the wrong word, and then you'll end up in one of these re-education centers. And the re-education centers are the most horrible torture that you can't even imagine. I mean, I pray that you can't imagine it, because the demons are the ones teaching them how to do these tortures and how to
Yeah,
keep.
and I mean, we can't say certain words either, and otherwise we find ourselves in re-education programs.
Yeah. Yeah, it's already.
Jordan Peterson, that's what happened. He's gonna lose his license. I don't know if he has already, but if he doesn't go and get re-educated.
Yeah.
And you have to wonder, like, how do you re-educate a grown man with like like when is it done? When is he done? And
Right.
who says so? And anyway, yeah,
Yeah,
perfumed and
exactly.
elegant. Yeah.
Well, I think it's what Father Roman Braga is saying. It's when you compromise. It's when you let go, and then
Exactly. Yeah.
they win.
Yeah, yeah.
I read
Um,
of like a technique in China that they would use. They used it in Korea as well with the POWs, where they would they had this typewritten letter, and it was basically talking about how great America was and how much you loved America, and you had to handwrite the letter yourself and sign your name at the bottom, and then you would do that for like 3 days, and you had to do that in order to eat, and then they would start changing one little word at a time. I love America except it has this problem, or I love everything about America except this one small thing, or it would say, I don't always love America, and it just like slowly, but you had to write the whole thing out by hand, and they made you, okay, you have to write it 3 times, and sign your name at the bottom of it,
mm,
before you could eat, and they would just progressively invert the original letter to the
right.
exact opposite, and you had to sign your name to it the whole time. They were trying to deconstruct your identity, and I think that's what it's all about, because they think we're blank slates,
Yeah.
so
Yeah, and in my mind, I just keep wanting to map that onto things that are going on today, because I think it's actually frighteningly easy to map that onto things that are going on today.
yes.
Um,
Yeah.
okay, so I thought it was interesting when you talked about the spiritual awakening, that it's not going to be from priests and bishops and so on, but through the lay people of communist countries,
Yeah.
ex-communist countries.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, they come here and try to share their experiences, and people don't believe them.
yeah,
I've seen this firsthand. I
I
saw
know.
this
I did
older
too.
Russian couple. They were trying to talk to young people about how dangerous this stuff is that's going on in school, and the kids were like, "What are you talking about? Like, this is gonna, like, it's not gonna be like that here."
Yeah.
Oh, it's crazy.
Um, And then when he was talking about scholasticism and spirituality, scholasticism was man reaching for God, and spirituality was God descending.
Yeah.
It was the way he described it. I would call it grace, right? It was a gift.
Yes.
And the first word that came to my mind was embody.
Yeah.
It seems to be like a running theme in this little corner of the internet, right? Where, and I mean, for me personally, embody is incarnation, right? So
Right.
it's that sacramental
Yes. The
church
sacramental view. Right.
that he's talking about.
Right. Right.
So yay for this little corner. That's all I have to
Yeah.
say.
Well,
Are we
Father. Oh, go ahead.
Here's the question. Are we part of this third millennia, right? What did he say? Was it the third millennia? Or how did he put that? He said he wouldn't be here for the spiritual awakening.
Right. He wouldn't be here, but this would be the third millennium of a great spiritual awakening. Yeah.
Right. And anyway, just want to want to pump up the corner and say, are we part of this awakening? Maybe.
Well, I have to say my family's been transformed. That's all I can say. My marriage has been transformed. My relationship with my daughter has been transformed. My relationship with my parents has been transformed. My relationship with my boss at work has been transformed because Christ has begun to transform me. That's all I can say. So it's definitely very real in my life. It's very
and the transformation
change.
The transformation, it's kind of like, maybe this is a terrible analogy, but it's like when you put a cake in the oven and you don't just sit there and watch it, and it goes from being this liquid to this big fluffy thing over time. And it's a terrible analogy, but I know these things have happened in my life too. Like, things have become radically different. And it's not because I'm seeing things differently or seeing them through different eyes, but relationships with family and friends, and people have actually commented to me about my own transformation, which it's not like I'm trying to do anything. This is the thing. I'm not trying to be transformed. I'm just being transformed. It's just happening.
Right. Yes.
So,
Yeah. The efforts I make actually make it take longer.
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, totally.
Because I think I know what I need. Right.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
No, and I don't. So.
Okay, well, I guess this is the last 10 minutes, and I guess we'll just get right back into it.
Yeah, this is the finale, and it was worth the wait. So thanks for everybody for waiting this long, but it's worth.
So, oops. There we have it. That's the whole interview.
Yeah.
Father Braga. I didn't put the link in, but it's very easy to find. There's not a whole lot of if you just type his name in, Father Roman Braga, I would definitely recommend listening to it again because he said so many things in there. So I don't know. Have you got time still, Jeremy, for a few?
Yeah.
For a little longer. Because I'll just drop the link in here. I put it in here already once or twice. But if anybody wants to join and, share any insights or thoughts about what you just saw, I'd love to hear them. I didn't write any notes on that part. I just let it wash over me again. The first time I listened to it, I just cried. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it had the same effect on me as far as I need frequent reminders that God is not trying to catch you off guard. I like that, how he said that. God's not trying to catch you off guard. He's just looking at you out of love, and that's such a beautiful,
Yeah.
it's such a beautiful comment. It's such a beautiful perspective, right? Because I grew up with I was very anxious and very terrified of God and terrified of dying at the wrong time, unprepared. Like God is not trying to catch you off guard, right? And I was constantly afraid of that, and God is healing that with me, and that relationship, my relationship with Him is being healed because I do feel that affection. The other day I was in the backyard of my house and I had headphones on because I was mowing the lawn, and I was walking back to I had dumped the bag of grass, and I was walking back and I heard a sound. I was like, what is that sound? I took my headphones off and I looked up, and I've never seen this before. There were magpies, and they were all up in the top of I have poplar trees in my backyard. There were magpies up in the top, but you couldn't see them. They were hidden by the leaves, but they would fly out. There was like 5 or 10 of them that would fly out, and they would fly in this beautiful pattern against the wind. The wind was blowing, and they were flying in this beautiful pattern, and they were, making magpie sounds, and they didn't actually sound too bad. Most of the time magpies don't, but this time they sounded nice. Yeah. And they would fly in these beautiful, intricate patterns, and they fly back into the tree. And they did it like 3 times. And then they just like one by one started flying away into the wind. It was just like this beautiful moment. And I was reminded of that parable of the kingdom of heaven is like a small seed that you plant in the garden, and it grows into a large tree, and the birds of heaven come down and roost in the tree. And I felt like God was saying hello, and
yes, and he was.
Yeah, it was very beautiful.
That was a Sophianic moment, my friend. Definitely was. Yeah. What got me crying was when he talked about praying without ceasing, because I literally condemned myself. Is that you?
Yeah, my fan kicked on. Sorry. I have an AC that kicked on. Sorry.
Is it a really high-pitched noise, or is it in my ears? I'm just wondering if it's me.
No, it's probably not getting filtered well by my...
Okay.
There we go.
Okay. Yeah. That. Okay, good. I thought it was my... Every now and then I'll have these like high-pitched noises in my ears, and I thought it was me. I'm like, wait a minute. I've never had that one. But... yeah, I was really hard on myself for many, many years because I couldn't bring myself to pray. We've talked about this with Lance, extemporaneously praying, I think, is the word for it. It wasn't that I was afraid to pray. It wasn't that I was afraid to talk to God, because I was talking to God all day long. I was like literally doing what he said, like talking to God at the grocery store, talking to God, look at the children, look at the, isn't this wonderful? And sometimes it was just a word, Lord, oh Lord, and, but I felt really, really guilty about not having a prayer life. Like what I thought was a prayer life, where I'd sit down and pray and I don't know, pray for people, I really had to deprogram. Like I don't think of it as deconstruction, but relearn a lot of things that I thought were really important things to do as a Christian, and that if you didn't do them, then you weren't going to blossom as a Christian. You were just, yeah. And so again, my own experience was confirmed in the words of this Orthodox priest. And I was just really moved by that. I really needed to hear it was a gift from God to hear that for me. And that's why I cried, because it was a very beautiful gift.
Mm.
It felt like it was just for me. I don't
Mm.
know if that's a selfish thing, but I needed to hear that so badly, you have no idea. So,
Yeah, well, it's a relief to think that, you know, God knows, he knows our struggles, and he remembers. There's a Psalm 102 or Psalm 103 in like most, Psalm 102 in the Septuagint, Psalm 103 in the other Bibles, where he just says, you know, God knows what we're made of. He remembers that we're made of dust. You know, he knows what our struggles are, and he remembers that we're made of dust and ashes, right? It's like he doesn't hold us to some like impossible standard that we can't reach. He just, any step toward him, he moves toward us 1,000 steps.
so I before you answer this, Jeremy, I just want to say to Jan God, because he also mentioned up here. You know, Father Braga said, and somehow I'm getting the word from God that it's okay, Sherry, you can say your own words now. I'm still not quite there yet. You become yourself, finding yourself, you find God. And he also said that there is an empire inside of you. I don't know if I can talk about this too much longer because I'll get really emotional about it. But Meister Eckhart also says that the eye with which you see God is the eye with which God sees you, Jan God. And Jesus says the kingdom of heaven is inside of you. And in order to enter it, you have to become like a little child, which Father Braga also quoted. So there's some food for thought, and maybe Jeremy wants to say something about that too.
Well, yeah, one, I would say that the icons are intended to not just be a window into heaven, but also a mirror into your own heart. You're being called when you're looking into an icon. But to answer Jan's question as well, is that the way we would say it is that God the Father is basically outside time and space, outside category, and is unknowable because he is uncreated and we're created, but he condescends to us through Christ, and we can have a personal relationship with God because God the Father, God Jesus Christ, and God the Holy Spirit all share one nature. They're all uncreated, but Christ entered into our world, into our cosmos, he condescended to us in order that we could know him, so that we could see God walking in the world and have that relationship with him. And so, you know, that's what the scriptures were, is an account of the people who saw him walking and teaching in the world, and through the sacraments we can then begin to have our own relationship, a direct relationship with God. And so if we're having a relationship with God, we're having a relationship with God the Father, God Jesus Christ, and God the Holy Spirit, all at the same time. It's like, but the way that Christ appeared in the world, the way God appeared in the world is Christ. And that's why, like, icons, there are certain rules about icons of Christ, and one of them is that he always has to be portrayed as a man. You can't do like God as a lion, or Christ as a lion, or Christ as a lamb. You can't, you'll see pictures of Christ holding a lamb on his shoulders, but Christ is always portrayed as a man, because that's how he appeared to us in the world. That's how he revealed himself to us. So, and because he's a man and not just a concept and not just an idea, that is why we can have a relationship with him. It makes it much easier, because you can't have a relationship with a concept.
Right. I've been reading the lectures by Vladimir Soloviev called Divine Humanity, the book of lectures that he gave. And I actually kind of, I mean, I'm not saying that Father Braga read them, but I doubt, I imagine he did. But anyway, his comments about repentance for both Constantinople and Rome, I thought were just brilliant and beautiful, actually. And they also reminded me of some of the arguments that Soloviev makes in the book. I'm not finished it, so I can't, say much, except he does talk about scholasticism, a la Catholicism, right? Because that's really what Catholicism brought with it, as being a necessary component, and in the sense that I'm not sure if you're familiar with Barfield, Jeremy. Are you?
I started reading the appearances one, but I didn't finish it. I got halfway
Okay.
through it. And
Well,
then
it's kind of
saving the appearances. That one, yeah.
Right. Barfield talks about it. The thing to keep in mind is Barfield was an anthroposoph. He was in the Anglican Church, but he was also anthroposophic, and so it's all about synthesis, right? Anthroposophy, and not just anthroposophy, though. But anyway, in this case, and so there's a synthesis that has to happen between scholasticism and spirituality, such as what you find in the Orthodox Church, that brings people into like a final or full final participation, is what Barfield describes it as, but it would be like a full participation. And Rudolf Steiner talks about it in terms of science and spirituality, or, because Rudolf Steiner was a doctor. But that's also scholasticism, right? Like, so it's just interesting, because we're in this period, according to Barfield, we're in a period of withdrawal from God, right? From original participation. But we have to go through it in order to reach that synthesis, right?
Yeah.
And so I just thought it was interesting that Father Braga brought that up, and that he also grants, he doesn't call for a unity of sameness. He doesn't say the Catholics have to become Orthodox, or the Orthodox have to become Catholic, or the Protestants have to become Orthodox, or whatever.
Right.
But he calls for a unity in the diversity, right? Which I find just beautiful, really. And he even goes so far as to include pagans in that universal church, which I personally agree heartily with. So that made me happy to hear him talking about those things.
Yeah. Well, and I liked how he said, I mean, right at the end, where he was just like, don't become Greek or Russian, like bring your full American identity to the church, like bring that history with you. And I think that's really a really beautiful idea as well, is that you don't have to subsume yourself. You don't have to pretend you're something you're not,
Well,
we can
that's
bring
also
that flavor with us, and it does affect how we worship, but it can be baptized, it can be sanctified.
Yeah, like that's how I understand the OCA came into existence, was to enable that identity to come forward, right? So that people weren't caught up in an ethnic church, like a Romanian church or a Russian church, but that they could be in the Orthodox Church of America. And I don't know if you've ever heard, but there are some really great Appalachian chants.
Yeah, I have heard that. Yeah.
Yeah, they're
It
just
is really good.
amazing. And
Well,
yeah.
Father Turbo wants to build an Art Deco Orthodox church. He
Oh,
thinks
really?
He thinks Art Deco is the height of American art.
Really? That's
Yeah.
interesting.
Yeah. Well,
I
so
wonder
the
what
guy
Deco is.
Art Deco came from Art Nouveau, and Art Nouveau, one of the main guys who started the Art Nouveau movement was Orthodox. And so like the Art Nouveau has a lot of like kind of iconography, like a lot of influence from iconography, and that carried over into Art Deco. But yeah, he's like, he really wants to do an Art Deco Orthodox church. I think it'd be phenomenal. I love Art Deco.
Yeah, Art Deco is amazing. Yeah. Well, it doesn't look like anyone's going to jump in with us, so
Okay.
I think we could wrap it up now.
Yeah.
Any last thoughts, Jeremy?
No, I'm grateful that everyone's joining us for this. This is really special. It's a really special project to me. It's something I look forward to all week long, and I'm glad that people are participating, engaging, asking good questions, and I'm just glad that we have this opportunity to share these lives with everyone. And because it just doing this project every week renews my faith, and it really opens up my heart, and I feel it's a much better approach than any kind of apologetics or any kind of stupid debates or arguments or anything. It's just,
well, I mean,
beautiful lives, right? Like,
right. And like when I saw that interview with Father Braga, I was like, okay, this is it. We have to hear this man's voice and watch him and his gestures and see the smile,
yeah,
because there's something very contagious about him,
yeah.
It's just really, really beautiful. And like I said last week, there's something about the modern saints that just makes this all the more accessible. And I think, at least for me, the beauty of knowing the lives of the saints is to be transformed by them. And so the closer they are to, I'm not saying we have to just do contemporary saints, by no means, but the closer they are to us, the more easily we can imagine what they've been through.
Yes. Yeah. Their struggles are more familiar to us.
Yeah.
And they, that my priest really emphasizes reading the lives of modern saints.
Mm-hmm.
He's like, obviously we have the daily remembrance of the saints of the day, but like the other nice thing about the more recent lives of the saints is that rather than just hearing a short story or a few pages, you have hundreds of pages about their life and their teachings,
Mm-hmm.
that have been gathered by their spiritual children, and that's what's really beautiful about the modern saints, is that you get a much more detailed portrayal of
Right.
their life and of their teachings. It's easier to, and their struggles are tied to ours. Their struggles are very familiar and very relevant, to our lifestyle.
Yeah.
It's nice, and it's a testament that the church is still producing saints, right? It's by their fruits, it's an undying tradition.
Right.
So
yeah. And yeah, good. All right. Jeremy and I don't know what we're going to tackle next week, but we'll figure something out.
we'll figure it out.
And again, thank you everybody for joining us. I really appreciate it. And we'll sign off now, and we'll see you all next Tuesday. Bye.
So yeah, thanks.